We're defined not so much by what surrounds us or who surrounds us as we are by our relationship to what surrounds us and who surrounds us. As we discussed on Shabbos in the Medrash here, a smartphone is neither good nor bad. It's just a piece of plastic and metal. It doesn't make choices, and therefore one can't assign moral stature to it. It's good, it's bad, it's nothing. It's neither. It's neutral. What's good or bad is my relationship to it. Am I subservient to it, or have I mastered it? And that relationship with everything around us, to what degree am I master of it, and to what degree am I subservient to it, is what really determines the world in which we live. And that applies also in management and in leadership. It's defining the relationship of the people that we work with, of the people that we contract with. It's in all commercial relationships, and not only commercial relationships. It's important to clarify how much authority are we giving to another person? How much responsibility are we giving to another person? What ownership are we giving to another person? So delegation, dictation, and novation, say והפס in Avodah Zarah, Daf Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph. If you don't know what novation works, I'm sure many of you do. If you don't know what the word means, don't worry. You know what the word means. If you don't know what the word means, don't worry. I didn't know either until the Ravid taught me this morning. 12th century Provence Ravid taught me what novation means and how it plays a role, and we'll learn it as we go through. What's the case here in the Gemara? Omar Rav Yehuda Omar Rav, mutar la'adam lomar la'oved kochavim, tzei ve'afes alai menat hamelech. The din, we know the law, is that you can't have benefit from Avodah Zarah, and if wine is yayin nesech, or even if it's stam yainam, which we won't go into at the moment, let's assume it's yayin nesech, it's wine which it belongs to an idolater or has been used by an idolater or dedicated to idolatry, we can't get any benefit from that wine. Now we have a situation where the king requires a tax from the citizens, and the tax is in the form like Meiser with us. It is a percentage of your produce. If you're a wine producer, you give a percentage of your wine to the king. And here, the Jewish wine producer says to a non-Jewish agent, go and sort this out with the king. You go to the government offices and sort my debt out. I owe the king taxes on the wine that I produce. Go and sort it out. And obviously I'll pay you whatever it costs. And that's okay, you can do that, even though the non-Jew is probably going to have to buy wine, which will be yayin nesech, and give the yayin nesech to the king, because the king wants a certain amount of wine. If the Jew has got 100 barrels of wine, he owes 1 barrel to the king. And he either the agent is going to buy a barrel of wine and give it to the king, or the agent is going to take the Jew's barrel, but once he takes it and handles it and it's in his property, it becomes yayin nesech in any case. So now the debt is being paid with the yayin nesech. This is the problem. The Jew's debt to the government, his tax debt, is being paid with yayin nesech. He's being neh from yayin nesech. Says Rav, but in this particular format, it's okay, you can do this. So says the Gemara, how can you do that? Al yomar adam lo ovid kochavim ol tachtai lo otzar. We've already learned in a brisa that you can't say to a non-Jewish agent, take my place, I'm delegating to you to sort things out with the government. Go and sort out my taxes with the government. Amalei Rav answers, ol tachti lo otzerka amrit. You're not comparing apples with apples. There you're talking about where I ask the agent to represent me. That's not the same as here. What I'm talking about here is the second part of the brisa, where he's allowed to say, get me out of my tax responsibilities. Get me out of my tax debt. You go and sort that out. That's what's different. So we've got two cases here. We've got the case of ol tachtai, take my place, represent me, and sort me out. And they're very different. In the one case, you can do it. In the one case, you cannot do it. Rashi is very fascinating because Rashi says, gives us the whole background. Israel, they used to give 10% to the government. And this Jewish person has a wine production and he has to give wine to the king. He can say to the non-Jewish agent, to his accountant, go and sort this out for me. What's going to happen? The accountant is going to come back and say, I've sorted out your tax. I had to buy a barrel of yain nesech and give it to the king, and that's fine, and it cost me $500. And the Jew has to now pay him the $500. He's, at the end of the day, he lands up having purchased a barrel of yain nesech, which was given to the king to undo his debt. How can you do that? The reason this works, says Rashi, is because the agent, the accountant, could have paid it off. He didn't have to use wine. Yes, it's true that the tax is a barrel of wine, but it doesn't have to be a physical barrel of wine. He had the option. He could have said the barrel of wine is worth $100. I'm paying $100 to get rid of this debt that my client has. So if the accountant says, but instead of giving the $100, I'm going to give him a barrel of wine because I can get the barrel of wine at a discount. So I will buy the barrel of wine from somebody I know and I'll give the barrel of wine to the government. So he has the option. Since he has the option, he's not really representing me in giving the barrel of wine because all he's representing me is in negotiating a deal. That I've authorized him to negotiate a deal. I haven't determined the strategy. All I've determined is the outcome. Get me out of the tax debt. How you do it, I don't care. The Goy decides, the non-Jewish person decides, I'm going to use the barrel of wine to get him out of it. Fine, that's your choice, that's your decision. I'll compensate you whatever the cost was. But you didn't give him the barrel of wine on my behalf. You negotiated on my behalf, and you and the government agreed on the settlement. And I will compensate you for the settlement you agreed on. But you remained authorized to decide on the strategy whether you're going to use cash or wine. However, if he doesn't have that option and he has to pay with wine, so if he says, if he says, go in my place to sort this thing out, if he says, take my place, I've got an appointment with the tax collector on Monday at 3:00, you go in my place and you sort it out, and we're talking about a situation where he doesn't have that option, in such a case, clearly this is the person now is doing what he was told to do, and what he's told to do is use the wine because there is no other option. So Rashi says the only way it's mutar is if the agent is free to choose the means of payment. He can choose wine, he can choose cash. If the agent doesn't have that freedom, this wouldn't work at all. This only works. He's not the shliach. However, if he had no option, and I've told you to stand in my place, then whatever you pay to the government is in my place. Tosfos takes a different view. And we need to understand the difference between Rashi and Tosfos. Tosfos takes the view, he brings Rashi and disagrees with Rashi, and he says it makes no difference if the agent had the option to pay with cash or not, even if he had no option. What's important is the wording of the contract. Did he say, sort this out for me, or did he say, represent me? If he said, sort this out for me, the contract is not one of agency. The contract is one of principle. If he used the words of represent me, then the contract is one where the non-Jewish person who's now paying the government with a barrel of yain nesech is doing so on behalf of the principal. The principal is the Jewish wine owner. And that's the question. Who's the principal? Who is the government negotiating with? Is the government negotiating with the wine owner and this is just an agent? Or is the government negotiating with the agent? Says Tosfos, that's all that's important. Look at the contract. The circumstance doesn't matter. Rashi says, look at the circumstance. Does he have the option to pay with cash? In that case, everything's fine. If he doesn't have the option to pay with cash, this whole thing wouldn't work. Then no matter what I say, says Rashi. That the difference between Rashi and Tosfos is in the case where the agent doesn't have the option to pay with cash. So the debt has to be paid with wine. Says Rashi, you're in trouble. Now there's nothing you can do because whatever you say, he's acting on your behalf. You've told him what to do. You've told him pay off with wine because there is no other option. Says Tosfos, no, we're not looking at the circumstance. We're just looking at the contract between these two people. Are you an agent or are you a principal? That's what's important in terms of the wording of the contract. And I struggled a lot with Tosfos. I understand Rashi. Rashi is saying when you delegate, you've got to decide whether you're delegating outcome or strategy. If you're saying to your employee, to your manager, to your agent, this is the outcome I need. I don't care how you do it. Obviously, it has to be legal, it has to be ethical, but use your own ingenuity to figure out how to do this. Then you are giving ownership to the other person. And if the other person is successful, he deserves congratulations. If the other person messes up, he deserves to be called on that. This was your business. You should have done this in a better way. But if I tell them how to do it, which a lot of managers do, they don't just tell their people what to do, they tell them how to do it. You must do it the way I would do it. This is how I would do it. Well, then you're taking responsibility. If the boss tells the employee, this is what you need to do and this is how you need to do it, then I'm just the robot. I'm just doing I'm an extension of you and you take responsibility. And that's why one has to, when one's delegating, one has to be able to let go. If a board appoints a CEO, they can't micromanage the CEO because then if the CEO messes up, the board is responsible. A CEO can't micromanage his executives. If he micromanages them and they mess up, then he's responsible. You've got to decide whether you're delegating ownership or you're just delegating activity. And that's what Rashi really talks about. As one learns Rashi, it takes one into that space of clarifying and how important it is to clarify, am I delegating activity or am I delegating outcome? And this depends on how much latitude the employee, or in this case, the agent has. If the agent has the latitude to choose cash and decides to give Yain Nesach instead, that's his decision. But if he has no latitude, there's nothing but Yain Nesach, then the fact is you're not delegating outcome. You're actually telling him what to do because he doesn't have any options. Says Tosfos, no, even if he doesn't have any options, what's important is your language. Are you delegating? You've got to clarify your relationship. Are you letting go of this and leaving it to the agent, or are you holding on to this? That's what you've really got to check. To what extent are you connected with this? To what extent are you holding on with this? But Tosfos was very difficult for me because it just depends on words. The fact is you're telling him what to do. The fact is he has no choice. The only way he can get rid of the debt is to give Yain Nesach to the government. That's the fact. Now, how you word it, is that going to be, are we going to split hairs on the wording of the contract to decide whether this is an Isur or it isn't, even possibly an Isur d'oraisa under certain circumstances? It's going to depend on the wording of the contract? Or Rashi says it depends on circumstance. That makes sense. Tosfos is very difficult. So I thought, where does Tosfos get it from? Where does this come from? And I found the other Rishonim that go this route, including the Ritva, who's just a little bit earlier than our Tosfos. Tosfos and Avodah Zarah is a late Tosfos, and the Ritva is just a little bit earlier. And we see a school of thinking that is already developing before Tosfos. The Ritva quotes Rashi, and he says, "Aval midivrei harayved v'Rabbeinu haramban," but from the Rayved and the Ramban, nir'eh she'af b'zeh mutar. It would seem that even if he has no choice but to pay with wine, it's still okay. Because he didn't make him an agent, he didn't make him a shliach. He made a contract with him. You've got to get me out of the tax deal. You've just got to solve my tax problems. That's what the contract was. Yes, circumstantially, there's only one way to do it. But I'm not getting into that. I'm engaging you to solve a problem. I'm not engaging you to do anything specific. Just solve the problem for me. That still doesn't help us a whole lot, but I'm giving you an idea of sometimes how you've got to understand a Tosfos. You've got to at least acknowledge, firstly, that the Tosfos isn't making sense to you. If you don't acknowledge that, then you just read on. Once you understand the Tosfos doesn't make sense, either you're able to work it out in the words of the Tosfos, which I was not able to do, or you go back and see where's Tosfos drawing this from. So we get the Ritva, it still isn't very helpful. But the clue is the Ritva says the words of the Ravid. So we've got to open a Ravid and look at the words of the Ravid. And this is where we come to the concept of novation. אבל אמר לו מלטני מן האוצר דמשמע סלקני במעות האלו, כלומר קבל אתה עליך חוב המלך, ויהיו אלו המעות שלך. I owe the king $100 worth of wine. I'm selling the debt to you. I'm transferring that indebtedness to you. You now owe the king a barrel of wine. And here's $100. That's what I'm paying you to take over this indebtedness. Now, if you can get a discount from the government, you get a 20% discount, you've made the 20%. If you can solve it verbally, if you just have a good relationship with the bureaucrat in the government office, and he can say, you know what, forget it, it's okay, it's only a barrel of wine, then you've made yourself $100. Not my business. I have removed myself from the debt. I've transferred the debt to you. That's novation. When the person, it's not the same as selling a debt when you are the creditor. Here you're selling the debt when you are the debtor. And you're saying, I want to be shot of this. I don't want to have this hanging over me. I don't want this indebtedness. I'm paying you the value of the debt. You sort it out on whatever basis you can, and whatever you can make is yours to have. That's what's happening according to Tosfos. So this is not just wording in a contract. This is really the extent of emotional connectedness with this barrel of wine. The way that the Ravid learns it, if this is novation, I'm getting rid of this debt at all. I have no further connectedness with the government. I have no further connectedness with the tax collector. I have no further connectedness with the barrel of wine you're going to use to solve this. I'm out of it completely. I don't have a debt anymore. You have a debt. That's the mechanism that works. And so what's important to appreciate is, both according to Rashi and the way we now understand Tosfos, as the Ravid explains this approach, what's important is where your head is, where your mind is. How connected are you? So if, going back to the smartphone example, if the smartphone is on the table while you're studying, while you're learning, or while you're davening, or whatever, and you're connected to it, that's connection. One needs to have the ability to define relationship. What is my relationship? We do that with chometz on Pesach. What does bitul mean? Bitul, the chometz is still there. What do I do on Erev Pesach? I'm mevatel the chometz. What does it mean I'm mevatel the chometz? The chometz is there. There's a loaf of bread, and what am I doing? I can destroy it, that's biur chometz, but I can be mevatel it. Mevatel means I don't care about it. It's ka'afra da'ara. It has no value to me. I've disconnected from it. We have the capacity to connect and to disconnect. We can connect to people, and we can connect to objects. We can disconnect from people, and we can disconnect from objects. The quality and the nature of our connection is what determines everything about our lives. It's how we're connected and how we're disconnected, not what the object is or who the person is. And in our relationship with the people around us, we need to understand the level of our connectedness, the level of our ownership, the level of our subservience. What really, we have to be really honest with ourselves. What is the nature of my relationship with the people around me? What is the nature of my relationship with the things around me?